Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here. Got another Alestrals video for you. So coming at you with a winged Nexus deck. Definitely wanted to try this out as I have not really played a dedicated wind deck. I think this is the only spirit type where I haven't played like a deck really dedicated to playing a lot of it. So, including the cards Divine Rune. Well, I haven't played like Hephaestus or Artemis yet, but anyway. So yeah, like I said, definitely wanted to come at you with some wind. I think this is actually just card for card, the same list that tops the most recent webcam tournament. So, definitely an already very solid build and a good showcase for what the wind deck can do. So let's go ahead and dive right down into the card list here and talk about what this deck's all about. So, we're starting off with 3 Hydrake here, and this is not always played in Wind, but I saw these in the most recent list, and, you know, I couldn't not try them out. The Hydrake's actually really, really good. Specifically, I've noticed that it's a great counter to one of the most common turn 1 plays in the current format, which is Elachik. Actually, or Jolton, too. Basically, if you're up against Thunder, and they go turn 1 Elachik for the Zeus, they won't play the Zeus on turn 1, and even if they go for the Jolton, they very rarely play the Mount Olympus on turn 1 as well. They usually wait for the race to the top or for a better battle advantage, right? So if they end with a 4-attack dude like that, you can simply go into Hydrake, enter battle, crash, and then you can special cast the Twindra from your deck. The Twindra gets to immediately get in for 2, and even though 5/4 isn't that high a stat line for a 2 spirit, if they do battle over it, then you simply go into the Pantera. So I really like Pantera. I think it's a really cool card. That is kind of another reason why I wanted to try out this variant in particular, is because it's another excuse to play Pantera. I want to get back into 15s in general. I think that might be because, like, a lot of the reason, aside from making deck profiles in general, why I've been playing so many different decks lately is just trying to find one that really, like, I groove with, you know, one that I really, like, want to be maining and playing a lot, and had a lot of fun dropping Pantera in 15s, and also threatening to do it in this deck too. So there's the Pantera line. As far as like wind Alestrals go, like just standard kind of toolboxy stuff, we're on 2 Exaltair, 2 Toxiswarm, 2 Nemesail, 2 Sorlet, and then 1 Galaxair. So the ratios might look a little bit weird here. It's a lot of 2-ofs and a 1-of, right? The Hydrake, I don't know why I hesitate on the name there. That is kind of the only wind Alestral that we actually play 3 of. A lot of you probably already know the reason for this, but for those who don't, the Divine Rune Aeolus, which we'll talk about here in just a moment, has the ability to search up Wind 1 spirits. So, in that regard, you don't really need to play that many 3-ofs of your Wind 1 spirits, right? 2-ofs will do. You do, of course, want to be drawing into these naturally, but again, you also have the help of Aeolus to grab whichever one you need in any given situation. So, the Exaltair is our Nexuser. When you do that, it burns an opponent for 2. Toxiswarm burns an opponent for 1 on receiving. Nemesail heals you for 2 on receiving. Sorlet, we've played in, I think, a couple of other decks at this point. It's just a great card in general, but lets you change positions. It's a 5/1, of course, as one of the reasons why it's so great. Galaxair is interesting. It's a 3/4 that says once per turn, you can, well, not once per turn, but this effect isn't once per turn, or is once per turn, you know what I mean. You can target an Alestral and swap its attack and its defense. A lot of the time, this is like kind of Wind Eddy. It's kind of the same in that like it's a 1-drop you can play that will often just win a combat. And you know, if you think about it, swapping your opponent's stats is basically the same thing as like changing their position, right? So, with some minor differences, of course. Yeah, I don't know. Some people don't play this. I can see not playing it, but I do think that the 1 is fine. I do think it is neat that it's just a you can, right? You don't have to pay a spirit to do anything with it, or, like, yeah, you don't have to expend anything. You just kind of do it. So that's kind of nice. So yeah, like I said, just 2-ofs of a lot of those, because you don't... I mean, some of the stuff like the Nemesail, you could honestly get away with 1-of. I've seen builds even on, like, 1 Sorlet, if I recall correctly. And then to round out our Alestral count, of course, 3 Astrabbit. It's an Alestrals deck. So, alright, I alluded to Aeolus earlier. We're playing 3 of this Divine Rune. So, this one, like I said before, can search out a 1-spirit Wind Celestial from your deck to your hand. One of the best parts about playing Wind is getting to play this card. Also, unlike a lot of other Divine Runes, instead of being able to enchant up to 3 additional spirits to it, you can enchant up to 4. That's because, again, its effect costs 2. So I will often just drop an Aeolus for 5. It's a little bit scary sometimes because it's, casually just a quarter of your spirit deck going onto 1 card right away. But, if you don't already have it in your hand, you can always search the Nemesail to help you recover spirits. But the ability to not only search stuff, but be able to Nexus with the Exaltair is going to be really important for your wind condition. We're not like a dedicated burn deck, but we definitely do a lot of our damage through burning with the Exaltair, and of course also the Toxiswarm, right? So, and of course having 3 Aeolus also makes that a lot more consistent. Our other big Nexus bank is going to be the Island of Aeolus. We're playing 2 copies of that. Not only is it a good Nexus bank, but if you look at the stat line for our wind cards, the Stormlight's 5 one is pretty good, but a lot of them really aren't just like that strong. So they do kind of need the help of the Island sometimes to be able to win combat against some more commonly played cards. But again, this is also definitely meant to serve as a Nexus bank as well. Played a couple copies of Cryoblast as well as Earthquake for some invoke speed removal. We've got Ambrose because it's a Celestial deck, and then Resting on Your Laurels for some more invoke speed removal. So for the counters, it's 2 Tsunami, we got 3 Gorgon's Gaze, 3 PTA, and 3 Shield of Achilles. Definitely like being more defensive with this deck again because the stat lines of our dudes are not as quite as impressive as some other decks. So, all right, that's it for the main deck. For the Spirit deck, some of the numbers might seem a little bit weird, but it does actually make sense when you play the deck. 1 Leviathan, 1 Flurmine, because 2 Tsunamis are only Water card, 2 Cryoblasts are only Frost card, and if you're only playing 2 of 1 Spirit type of a card, honestly 1 Spirit is enough, especially for like an Invoke rune, 2 Zaptor for the Astrabbits. We got 2 Teratlus for the Earthquake, which means our remaining 15 is all going to be Wind. That might seem like a lot. Like, you might think, like, actually, these I wouldn't go up on ever, and of course I need to go up on more Teratlus. You could make an argument for playing 14 Wind and then playing a 3rd Zaptor, because for the Astrabbit, you can definitely get away with 2 Zaptor for 3 Astrabbit, but re-enchanting the bunny is like not an uncommon play in most decks. So in that regard, you could think about playing a 3rd. But that said, we definitely need all the wind we can get. Like I said, Aeolus is going to take 5 of these when it comes into play. I mean, you could do 3 if you wanted to, but I don't know. Again, for next team purposes, I just like having more on there, as well as the potential for a follow-up search. So I do think it is important to have a lot of wins in that regard, so that's why I'm on 15 here. But yeah, that'll do it for the deck list there. Now let's go ahead and see this gameplay. All right, diving into these wind games. We're up against Queso Jama once again, who is using Wet Thunder. That is going to be the Race to the Top Thunder deck with the water package. All right, we get to lead off with a Toxiswarm here, going in for that burn right off the bat. It's funny, Wind is like, it doesn't have like a lot of burn cards, but it burns efficiently enough that it often does get called a burn deck. But I think really it's more of a toolbox deck, like an efficient toolbox deck than anything else. And burn just happens to be a big part of what that toolbox does, right? So 2 back rows accompanying our Toxiswarm. Pretty idyllic opening. I'm not going to lie, these games are going to be a little bit short because we just opened like disgustingly well in both of them. Frankly, we got some very, very good hands. Eddie coming down here. Eddie going to turn the Toxiswarm to defense mode. I think I did have like a PTA or maybe even a Gorgons. I had some kind of out here and I just simply elected not to use it. Because I decided to shield. I think it was between Gorgons and Shield. I'm trying to remember because shielding an Eddie is not ideal. I was trying to think of what the other back row would have been that I would have rather used the shield. Okay, so PT is going to come down on my Astrabbit. I'm mainly looking for Aeolus here, and we do manage to find it. Because I do remember that I have Exaltair in my hand already, and I'm mostly just looking for a Nexus bank at this point. I don't have the highest hopes of my Toxiswarm necessarily surviving, but... Alright, here I am going to establish the Aeolus. And, as I mentioned before, I am going to put 5 wind. I don't think that you always necessarily do that, but I think early in the game it's fine too. Again, it can be a little bit scary. You know, as I mentioned before, that's a quarter of your spirit deck going down on 1 Divine Rune, but we are going to go for the search here. And, like I said, I already had Exaltair in my hand, otherwise I think I'd just grab that. And then Nemasail was the other card in my hand. Otherwise, I think I would have just grabbed that too. So we end up, after a bit of mulling it over, going for a Sorlich. It's a good generalist card, right? Because I already have some of these specific things that I was looking for in my hand. Alright, grabbing that Sorlich to hand, moving the Toxiswarm to attack mode. We get to swing in with the Toxiswarm, hitting for just 1 there. Rabbit does not actually end up getting in because the PTA brings it down to 0 attack, and of course Celestrials with 0 attack cannot deal damage. So PTA is going to get paid out for the Astrabbit, and then passing over to Queso here. Let's see what he ends up doing. Still this face down card. That Eddie could still come down here, although with the Aeolus established, the prospects of it are not quite as scary. It's going to be Foamy, actually, instead of the Eddy. And then that's going to get followed up with a Race to the Top. Or rather, a Mount Olympus. Getting a little ahead of myself here. Which will then be followed up by a Race to the Top. So, Foamy's 3 defense compared to Toxiswarm's 1 does end up meaning that the Toxiswarm will end up dying here. Oh, Foamy's actually coming out in attack mode as well. Yeah, I think I remember the face down card being Gorgon's Gaze now. Well, because that's the thing, right? Gorgon's on Eddie on that turn 1 there. You know, the Toxiswarm would have still had to have crashed into it. I didn't have the Aeolus at the time. I had to find that off the Rabbit. So that makes a little more sense why I shielded there. Excuse me. So I still have that Gorgon's Gaze down. Gonna contemplate using that against the Foamy here as I go to battle over it, because I really would rather they not pull like a Galaxy out of the deck here. That would certainly not be ideal. Yeah, thinking about if I want to go... I was mainly thinking if I want to go Exaltair or Nemasail here, but I decided I didn't really need the healing that badly like this early, so I'm going to go for the Exaltair to Nexus. That'll burn 2. Then I can set before flipping up the Gorgon's Gaze, which I'm going to do here in a second. Yeah, I'm remembering this now. There it is. Yeah, we're going to Gorgon's Gaze the Foamy and then battle over it, which will let us get in for another point of damage. So, you know, that's... I think that the Exaltair burning and the Toxiswarm, I think that's all by design, honestly, that and the Nemasail when it comes to wind. Because, you know, when you think about the fact that you're going to be relying on Aeolus so much and spending so many wind spirits for it, the burn and the heal on receive, and then with the Nexus, additional burn makes sense because, of course, the spirit differential, you need to make up for that. So Eddie's coming back down here again. We're going to PTA. This will not only destroy the Eddie during the end phase, but also makes it a 2-1, meaning the Exaltair's 2 defense actually is enough to let it live through the turn. It's very, very good for us. So I'm going to spend the Frost here. Just going to give up on the Cryoblast. I don't think this game is going to be too long at this point. So we're going to Nemasail, and I am getting low on wind. That's the other thing. So we definitely want to Nemasail now. Nemasail to heal. We're going to Exaltair. You'll notice I'm also not spending the last 2 on the Aeolus. Want to keep that Spirit Bank around, and I'm also not, you know, particularly stressing over having any particular Wind Celestial in my hand right now. So, yeah, we get to heal 2 more, and then also burn 2 for the Nexus, and then swing in for 3. So that was a massive differential on spirits right there. I mean, I healed 4 and dealt 5 in the same turn. So Having both these in attack mode does mean the Arcolith is going to come down. Of course, that is something you always have to consider when you are playing against Thunder. That Arcolith coming down for 5 is going to be quite nasty, especially with the Mount Olympus up, making it an 11-9. Definitely a force to be reckoned with there. Queso's going to set, swinging in with the Arcolith, but we've got our face down card, which is going to end up being a shield. So spending 2 to bounce, and that's going to end up being lethal there. Queso's going to just scoop it up, that face down card being an Earthquake. Going to go into the next game. And Queso's going to be taking the first turn for this one. Leading off with, looks like an Elechik. Elechik for the Zeus. Yeah, you can definitely consider playing Elechik in the second Wind as well. Elechik for 2 Aeolus, and playing 2 Aeolus rather, as opposed to just playing 3 Aeolus with no Searchers. I could even see a world where you could be on like a Wind Thunder hybrid build, more leaning that way, and then you can play Elechiks for Aeolus and then also be playing Zeus. Maybe, I don't know. At that point, it's like... And it sucks, because, like, with Thunder, a lot of the time, you have these, like, ideas for splashing it, and then a lot of the time it's just kind of like, yeah, or you can just play Thunder Nexus, which is just the best deck, or one of the best decks right now. So, gonna cast a Hydrate here and crash into the Elechik. I was just talking about this interaction earlier in the profile. I anticipate this is something that comes up quite a bit, because Elechik is played quite a bit right now. So, we can Hydrate, crash into the Elechik, and then summon a Twindra from our deck, which can then get in for 2. Very, very good stuff, and of course, if they do battle over this Twindra, we simply drop the Pantera directly from our deck. Either way, I'm definitely glad that we got the Twindra online here and out of the deck. That way we don't top deck it later at an inopportune moment. I mean, any moment really would be inopportune, because Twindra, a 5/4 for 2 Wind Spirits is not the thing we're looking to ascend from our hand. Resting on your laurels, coming down from Queso, that is going to end up taking care of the Twindra pretty nicely here. Still have our 2 face down cards though, which is always good, always good. Let's see what he ends up dropping next. So I take a sip of my water here. He's got some water too. Water for the foamy. I am going to PTA. Very nice, succinct answer, because it not only stops the damage, because it'll be at 0 attack, but I also just get to kill it without it being destroyed in battle, meaning it does not grab a Galaxy from the deck. Got an Aeolus here, so we're going to drop that. Once again, putting 5 Wind on it, and then we are, of course, going to use 2 right off the bat. Yeah, I think 5... I could see a world where you put 4 on it, though, honestly, because I feel like we've had maybe 1 more than we need on it for both of these games. Well, I guess we just played this game, but last game, and for the duration of this game, it does kind of feel like we have 1 more Wind Spirit than might be necessary on the Aeolus here. So, I could see putting a total of 4, the 1 initial plus 3 additional. I could see putting a total of 4 being the right play, so... gonna summon the Exaltair, and then Nexus, that'll burn for 2, and then we can get in for 2 pretty comfortably with no Alestrals or face downs from Queso over there. I feel like Queso just did not have great hands these games, particularly this one. Like, no counter runes is just so brutal. So that's kind of like, Wind's kind of one of those decks, I feel like, where, I guess it's true of all decks to a degree. Like, how much you can contest it depends on how well it does. But Wind, I feel like it has a harder time having standalone good plays. Like, I feel like if one of my things had been interrupted here, then we would have been looking a lot better. So, got a Toxic Swarm. I mean, this is just a brutal amount of burn here. Get to Nexus onto the Swarm. That's 4 total points. Yeah, I thought I said that word wrong for some reason. That's 4 total points of burn between the Toxic Swarm and the Exaltair. And then we're swinging in for 2 Spear. I mean, we just did 6 damage in 1 turn. Like, good God. I mean, we did have to crash our Toxic Swarm there, but I think that was definitely worth it. Because it stops the Arcolith in 2 different ways, right? It stops Arcolith from ascending on top of the... And there it was, too. It stops the Arcolith from ascending on top of the Jolton, and it stops us from having 2 attack mode dudes. So, Queso was very eager to play that Arclith. Didn't realize for a second that I only had one dude out. So, yeah. I mean, like I said, I really do think Queso just did not have great hands. I guess it could also be that this deck just has a good matchup against Wet Thunders, which might be a reason why it did so well, you know, in the recent webcam tournament. I could very easily see that being the case. We have another Toxic Swarm, and Queso's just going to scoop it up there. So GG's for sure. Thanks as always for watching these deck profiles. Definitely feel free to subscribe if you're looking forward to more Illustrials content. I put it out every other day on the channel. But for now, that's going to go ahead and do it. So this is Hexlex. I am signing out, and hoping that you have a fantastic day.